everybody, and welcome to Monday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. John Schmeelk, Lance Medow with you. The phone number is 201-939-4513, or just go to hashtag Giants Chat, or just reply to any of us on Twitter. Also, our email, bigbluekickoff@gmail.com. I'm going to focus Wednesday's show on that, folks, so make sure you get those emails in, bigbluekickoff@gmail.com. Lance, how was your bye week, buddy?
It was all right. Not bad. Business as usual. So nothing different than the previous weeks. It's all a blur to me. But good to be back and getting ready for these last 5 games here for the Giants.
Yeah, I have not been with you since almost 2.5 weeks ago. I was out with the pneumonia and then the bye week last week. So it's good to be back. It's good to talk with you guys again at 201-939-4513. We have some news today. Then we'll get to some big picture stuff. And then, of course, we'll get to your calls. And the news today, Lance, is that the Giants activate Tyrod Taylor in terms of his practice window to return. He had spoken to some reporters, and they had reported they thought he'd be ready to go by the end of the bye week. That's when his 4-game window was up. The bye week adds another week to that. So it's almost been 6 calendar weeks, even though it's been 5 weeks in the NFL season since he's last played. So, Lance, the bottom line, I think the Giants have an interesting dilemma here in terms of who they should start at quarterback. And this is how I kind of look at it. If you just want to take the cold analytical approach of, and again, this is assuming Tyrod's ready to go on Monday. We'll see if he is or not. This guy gives me the best chance to win. I'm playing him no matter what. I think you play Tyrod Taylor. He has the track record. Tommy DeVito played pretty well against Washington. His numbers against New England were whatever. Go back before that, very up and down. But here's the thing. Tommy DeVito has led this team to 2 straight victories. The locker room is behind him. The players like him. I think he's built some equity. Has he earned the right to start into the game by winning his last 2? You can make that argument too, and I wouldn't have a problem with making that argument. And there's an emotional part of it. There's the leadership part of it, the locker room part of it with a young player. So that, to me, are the kind of the 2 sides of this argument. I understand whichever way the Giants end up going with. Again, if Tyrod's healthy, I get either way you want to look at it. But I do think it's an interesting conversation the coaching staff is going to have as to which quarterback is going to get the start on Monday night.
Well, to your point, I don't think Tommy also did anything to lose games.
Correct, 100%.
So I think you got to take that into consideration. I think that makes it even more challenging of a conversation. I think if DeVito went out there, he had issues with ball security, he throws interceptions, I think it's relatively easy to go back to Tyrod Taylor and you say, hey, the veteran gives us the best chance to win.
Yeah, Tommy DeVito did enough to have another chance to start a game.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And you want to see that out of an undrafted rookie.
Yeah.
So I actually think the Giants, if they stick with Tommy DeVito, I think they can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, accomplish 2 goals simultaneously, however you want to spin it, where you do position your team to still remain competitive and try to win games, but at the same time, you evaluate for the future to determine what spot he belongs in on the depth chart. Because remember, I go back to Joe Shane spoke to the media last week. He assessed the quarterback situation. He said they're going to have to do something at the position regardless.
Because Tyrod's a free agent after the year.
Correct. So Tyrod's not under contract. Daniel Jones just had surgery. They have no idea whether or not he's going to be ready.
Could be anywhere from like August to October to November.
So if you don't re-sign Tyrod and you have Daniel and Tommy DeVito on the roster, and let's say they add another guy in the draft or free agency, whatever, the bottom line is Tommy then is the only guy, assuming Daniel's not ready, who you have some film, you have some familiarity with, which means he's going to be the guy that in all likelihood you go with. So I think you have to take that into consideration because not to take anything away from the Giants' victories, but they played a Commanders team with a young quarterback that is not the same ever since they traded away Chase Young as well as their other pass rusher, Montez Sweat, who's now in Chicago. And a New England team that has been extremely anemic and was shut out by the Chargers, and they couldn't even win a game where they held the Chargers to 2 field goals.
Lance, bottom line, if you look at the next year's draft order, how it's set up right now, New England's picking 2nd, Washington's picking 4th.
Yeah, well, that pretty much sums up my point.
They're not good.
Correct. They're in need of a quarterback. They're in need of some infusion. Washington has a better offense than New England, in fairness, but they have major issues on the back end.
I think pretty much you can say that about pretty much any team in the NFL at this point when it comes to New England's offense.
Sure, yes.
Sorry, Pearson.
No, New England compared to everybody adds something to the dialogue, however you want to spin it. But getting back to Giants land here, you're now playing a Packers team that has put together 3 straight wins, has looked really good with Jordan Love at the controls in terms of 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. Rashawn Gary had a field day on Thanksgiving against the Lions, and He's not too shabby against the Chiefs as well.
Well, Rashawn Gary's one of the top pass rushers in
but
the league
is
right
really
now. He's
starting
phenomenal.
to stand out.
Yeah.
That's my point. And all of the other teams that I could go through are in the playoff hunt. They're mathematically in the mix. You have veteran quarterbacks, Matthew Stafford. We'll see if Derek Carr's healthy.
You have 3 teams around 500, and then you have the Eagles twice, and they're one of the elite teams despite what happened this past week.
So the point is the caliber of the competition increases and the need to do more on offense increases, John. That's the other
you
thing.
have to keep pace with these teams.
100%. Now, I would say, is
I'm with you.
Tyrod the polished vet who gives you a better chance to win on the surface? Yes. But in fairness, John, I don't think they really have lit up the scoreboard, whether it's Daniel Jones, whether it's Tyrod Taylor, or whether it's Tommy DeVito.
No, I went back and I did the
Right?
math, and they averaged almost the same exact amount of points
there
when
you go.
Tyrod was in the game as opposed to Daniel Jones.
So when you evaluate it from that standpoint, I agree with you. Listen, you know I'm a huge proponent of Tyrod.
I know you are.
I wanted him here.
I'm
But-
actually surprised
Well-
you're going the other way on
well,
this.
because once again, I think Joe Shane's press conference convinced me that there's a need to evaluate Tommy further,
Right.
given the current circumstances.
No, and I think you're right. And I think you make a really good point, which is why I would understand both ways. And frankly, I think I would probably start DeVito as well. And then if it's really bad,
Sure, you have a great
then
insurance
you can
policy.
slide in Tyrod. And I
agree.
think it'd be
Yeah.
difficult. It's easier to slide DeVito out and slide Tyrod in than to slide Tyrod out and slide DeVito in, given, I think Brian Dable has really great respect for Tyrod Taylor. They have a good relationship. I think pulling him out of a game is something that they would probably be more hesitant to do. Well, if it's Tommy, okay, he's struggling a little bit against this particular team, this particular defense. We want to give him a different look, bring Tyrod Taylor back in. Then you can always slide DeVito back in for another start or two later
There's
in the
no
year.
rule of thumb that you can't do that.
There is no problem with that. So I agree. I think that's what I would do as well. But I think it's an interesting balance of just pure want to win the game, what's going on in the locker room with the team, and then to your point, evaluating the future, which I think is a good third aspect of this, is a nice little conversation in terms of how you want to kind of divvy this up. Because you're right. Look, I think 3 of the last 5 games, the Rams, the Packers, and the Saints, they have better record than the Giants, but these aren't elite teams either. So I think the Giants, if they play good football, they have a chance to win these games. These aren't, going to be double-digit spread games or anything like that, right? So I think it's interesting how they decide to take a look at this. Because, look, guys, I'm just saying this is how players and coaches operate. You are only 2 games in the win column out of a playoff spot. I mean,
4-8 versus 6-6, but a lot could change every single week in the NFL.
And there are 5 teams in front of you. But if you don't think the coaches are going in front of the players
and they should.
In the meeting today and are saying, guys, we're only 2 games out of here.
Yep.
And we're playing 3 of the teams ahead of us.
So you could sort of control the navigation of that.
Correct.
Yeah.
And again, we're not necessarily having that conversation. I understand what the situation is, but that's what the coaches are telling the players. So then, do you have to sell the players? Well, you're telling them we're trying to, make a playoff run here, and we think Tyrod's better. Why aren't you playing him? Oh, but DeVito's won the last 2 games. We love Tommy. We are all behind him. We have a good rhythm going here. Why would you want to take him out? I honestly think it's a really, really difficult decision.
But going back to your point, I think with the locker room behind Tommy, I don't know how much convincing, John, that you have to do.
It's a good question. I
To
don't
the
know.
room. I think most guys are at least content with what Tommy has done.
They also loved Tyrod when he was in there.
No,
too.
they do.
Spoke very highly about him also.
Absolutely. I just think if I'm a player in the locker room, I'm just putting myself in their shoes. Okay.
Sure.
And I have a great deal of respect for Tyrod Taylor. But I'm looking at the facts and I'm saying, we weren't lighting up the scoreboard. So is there that big of a disparity? And this is not a shot at Tyrod. It's just to show there are limitations in terms of what he can do as an individual based on every other facet of this team. So that's why I don't know if there would be as much overthinking in the locker room where players are saying to themselves, oh, wait a minute.
I agree.
We're 2 games out of a playoff spot. No, and I'm not saying you're believing this. I'm just saying you bring it up as a talking point.
Sure.
And they're saying, well, wait a minute. What is this coaching staff doing? It's mixed messaging. I don't think most players are operating.
My feeling is that the players would be, we won 2 straight with Tommy as our quarterback. Why would you change?
Yeah, let's ride it out.
Yes.
Let's try to see if we can take full advantage of this momentum. And I think it's
agree
a
with you.
good feel right now in the locker room coming back from
Yeah.
the bye. Tommy, I'm sure, feels great, confidence-wise, based on what he's been able to do. But to circle back to your point about the caliber of the competition, yes, not elite. Green Bay, New Orleans, and the Rams. I put the Eagles in that conversation. But, John, 10 points is not going to cut it.
Oh, no, you have to score more points.
They've got to find a way. And, maybe asking to get into the mid-20s is a little unrealistic.
Can you get 220, though?
Can you get to 20? Correct. You've gone to there twice.
I know.
Twice in 12 games.
And they got to 30 in those 2 games, believe it or not. They've actually haven't scored in the 20s once all year, which is kind of amazing when you think about it.
The caveat, though, is Isaiah Simmons gave you one of the touchdowns in the Washington game. Correct. So your offense only gave you 24
there were six,
in that game.
There were 6 takeaways in that
Okay,
game.
but hey, the facts are the facts, John, okay?
Correct.
So I'm going to hold you to the caveats.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yes.
All right, and that actually brings me to the other larger thing I want to discuss here today, which I think is interesting. Again, we'll take your calls in a second at 201-939-4513. I thought it would be interesting to kind of take a look at kind of the building blocks on both sides of the ball here. Lance was talking about looking ahead to the future. We had Joe Shane's press conference last week in terms of team building, getting this team where everybody wants it to go. So this is how I'm kind of terming building blocks, Lance. So you have an idea of how we can judge this. Guys that you would not look to use a significant resource, whether it's in the draft or free agency, to replace this player in your starting lineup, right? So let's start. Let's go defensive side of the ball first, okay? Low-hanging fruit. Let's go one player by one, and we'll see how far we get, okay? The easy one is Dexter Lawrence, top 5 player in the league, blah, blah, blah. Awesome player. I don't think we need to say any more about that. Potential defensive player of the year candidate, et cetera, et cetera. Dexter Lawrence, awesome. Obviously one of your defensive building blocks.
100%.
Where would you go for number 2?
And you're not looking outside the organization to those resources.
Correct.
The next guy I'll throw out, I'll go the opposite end of the spectrum. Young but showing true potential is Deonte Banks.
Yep.
And my answer would be the same thing. I don't think there's overwhelming urgency to find somebody to replace him, given the positive signs he's shown as a rookie.
Yeah, and again, I think you can still use a high pick or money on a second corner because Adoree Jackson obviously is going to be a free agent, but then Banks would just slide into the other
Correct, yeah,
spot.
and I would have brought that up when we bring up Adoree.
100%.
That would have been the talking point.
And I'm going to say the same thing about Kayvon Thibodeau, right? Because I think when you talk about Thibodeau, he's a guy where, could you still use a high pick on a pass rusher or go out and free agency, spend big-time money on a pass rusher? Sure. But then he's going to be your second guy, right? And I think he's shown enough where, yes, double-digit sacks, great. But more importantly, I just think really solid starter that's dependable. Plays 1 million snaps, has not shown any of the, quote-unquote hustle issues that people thought he had in college, which I know we didn't really see that on tape when we watched him, but a lot of that was kind of a theme that was out there. He's done good setting the edge. He's gotten more sack production this year. Would like to see a little bit more consistent pressure week in, week out. That's fine. But I think he's shown that he's going to be a good starting outside edge player in the National Football League. So that's why I would go with number 3.
Yeah, I like the fact that his sacks have been spread out. They didn't come in bunches, which is promising. And I also like the fact that you see his ability to stop the run as well as getting after the quarterback. All of those are positives, and it's interesting because as an extension to this conversation about Kayvon, even though Azeez still has a year left, even with his existence and Kayvon, there is still a need for an additional pass rusher. So very much like we're talking about Adoree, not necessarily impacting the Deonte Banks conversation, you have these young guys, but that doesn't take away the fact that you could add more to both of those positions.
And Ojulari's injury concerns have to be
and that's more of a reason why.
100%.
Yeah.
All right, you're up next.
I'll go Micah McFadden.
Oh, there we go. Get it in there, Pearson. I like it.
Just before I got the words out of my mouth.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, well, Micah McFadden, I think he's another pleasant surprise this season. Is he not?
How about the guy next to him, by the way? I like how he brings up McFadden.
Yeah, Bobby Okereke. Sure. Yeah.
Only because of the youth.
Okay.
Okay, we're on the youth movement. That's fair. Banks, Thibodeau, and then now, obviously, we bring in the Micah McFadden conversation. I think Micah has shown enough where prior to this season, John, I think my perspective would have been different.
Yeah,
and I would have said
for sure.
Linebacker is a position you may want to address at free agency, the draft.
Happy with both guys.
And Micah and Bobby, I think they complement one another very nicely. I mean, think about how many takeaways they've teamed up for.
Yeah.
Right? They seem to be in rhythm, in sync. Micah is a tackling machine who also can get penetration into the backfield.
Especially in that condensed box area. That's
what you want out of
linebacker.
linebacker. Yeah. So I think if this is what Wink got out of Micah, in really year one where he's the guy, because any other year he hasn't been the guy.
And being a rookie linebacker in this league is impossible. It's just really hard.
And it's also remarkable that...
I think Bobby's helped him too, right? I think
Bobby's presence is absolutely... But I can't remember, even off the top of my head, with another NFL team, when you go into a season talking so much about Beavers coming back from injury and being the guy. Meanwhile, the guy who was penciled in as the backup not only wins out the job, but plays at a level when you're talking about the top-tier guys on defense, he's in the conversation as a top 5 defensive player on the Giants right now. So I think he's blown everybody away, and rightfully so.
Yeah, so I'm with you. This is the best shape the Giant linebacker position has been in more than 10 years. It's been a long time. I think you feel good about it. I can make the argument Bobby Okereke is the Giants' best free agent addition in years. I mean, you can go back. Can you almost say he's already better than the Snacks, Jenkins, Olivier Vernon class? I mean, he's right with those guys. We'll have to see if he does it for a longer period of time, as those guys kind of all fell off after a couple years. Needless to say, successful addition. Bobby Okereke has been phenomenal in addition to what Micah McFadden's done. Okay, I'm with you. This is when it gets tough. I'm going to take Xavier McKinney, and I'm going to push him to the side because he's a free agent after the year. So it's hard for a guy to be a building block when he's going to be a free agent, right? So I'm going to slide him aside. I don't know if I would put anyone else in the building block conversation on defense. I would consider Pinnock at safety. I would consider it because he's young,
I think
he's on a rookie contract. But if you get to the second round of the draft and you have a really good safety, would you say, oh, I'm not drafting this guy because Pinnock's there? I think, all right, well, then Pinnock can be my third guy. And the Giants play 3 safeties a ton. He would still play a ton of snaps a game. So I'm not sure I'd put him in that conversation, but that would probably be the next and probably last guy for me I would put in this conversation.
Yeah, the second tier, I think, would be a guy. I mean, another guy that I think is valuable for the team, but also in that Pinnock conversation where if I have somebody, would I hesitate bringing him in to replace him, is Jihad Ward. Because Ward, I think, provides energy in his role. So he's valuable, but he's not somebody that you end the conversation about additional resources that you bring in. So I'd put Jihad Ward and Pinnock on the same second tier behind the rest of the guys that we had mentioned. Would you put
Flott in that conversation?
I think Flott is another guy like McFadden who's taken advantage of his opportunity, additional playing time. So given where he is on his contract, I do put Flott in that. Okay. Where, I mean, considering...
You like them, but you would consider upgrading is basically the way you would look at it.
Correct. And also taking into consideration of Pinnock, of the other individuals that we have been talking about, Jihad Ward, I would say Flott's probably put in the toughest spot. No? Of all the positions?
I think it's the toughest position to play as a slot corner,
so
for sure,
when you take that into consideration and then you look at how he's performed, for the most part, I think that he'd be a tougher one to have that conversation with versus Pinnock and Ward.
All right, so let's jump over now to the offensive side of the ball because I think this gets a little bit tougher now, and I'm going to take Saquon Barkley again, unrestricted free agent, obviously good enough to be a building block.
Like McKinney, though.
But last year the deal was slide him to side. Daniel Jones, injury, ACL. Don't know when he's going to be back. Let's take him. Let's slide him aside in terms of being special cases that it's hard to have this conversation about because of the circumstance surrounding them, right? I'll let you take the low-hanging fruit on offense and go first this time.
Well, do you want me to go offensive line? Is that the low-hanging fruit? Is it Andrew Thomas at left tackle?
You tell me.
Well, I don't know. I don't know where you're going with it, but I mean, to me, I think that would be the obvious. So I'll go with the low-hanging fruit.
That is the obvious.
I'll give you the oranges, the apples, the bananas, and everything else. Andrew Thomas. I don't know. Let me think about this. I'm not sure whether or not they should be content with his play and look at what happened when he did not play this season due to injury, or perhaps explore other options.
I think we both picked it. We had this show over the summer, right, where we selected our player you could least afford to lose on offense.
We did.
I know I picked Andrew Thomas. Did you also pick Andrew Thomas?
I can't remember who I said. I want to say I did say Andrew Thomas.
Well, for anyone
I know I focused on the offensive line as a position group.
Didn't select Andrew Thomas, I hope you watched the first 7 games of the year because that should be all you needed to know about which was the most valuable player on this Giants offense, and his name is Andrew Thomas. So, easy, I'm with you. I'm going to put John Michael Schmitz in that same category. And again, he has not played to a Pro Bowl and All-Pro level this year, but I think he's shown you enough. You invested a high second-round draft pick on him. You have him a rookie deal for 3 more years. And usually, when you draft a player, the center position is somewhat specialized, where you're not going to draft a guy, he can play guard or center. If you're going to draft a guy, you're drafting him to play center, right? Yeah. I would not go out and spend big money on a center in free agency. I would not use a day 1 or day 2 pick on a center because John Michael Schmitz is here. He needs to continue to improve and get better, but that's why I would consider him one of your building blocks. So I'm going to go John Michael Schmitz for player number 2.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't even been a full season for John Michael Schmitz, so I think it'd be a premature move to start going elsewhere. It's no different than when Andrew Thomas had his struggles as a rookie.
100%.
Okay? You preach patience. Evan Neal, who dealt with the knee injury, you preach patience. You have to, especially with these young offensive linemen. So I'm with you there. Third guy.
This is where it starts
on the
getting a little
offensive
tricky.
side of the ball. Yeah, as I survey the field and I look at the list, considering we're taking Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley out of the equation, I'm going to go with Jalen Hyatt. And the flashes that he showed, John, hey, when you take the chances
agree with you.
down the field, I think Jalen has proven he'll make plays for the quarterback. To me, the most impressive aspect of Jalen Hyatt thus far as a rookie, it's not so much the ability to utilize his speed. What I've been impressed with is it's very difficult for a young player, especially in college, John, when, remember, in college, you get 1 foot in, you're fine. In the NFL, you need 2.
And he's done that a few times.
And it's my pet peeve. I really wish there'd be a standardized rule. I would be a proponent. I think in college you should have both feet in. I think it'd make for an easier transition. We'll save that for another slow show in the random offseason. Stay tuned. That's a teaser. That's what you call that in the industry.
Ooh,
Okay?
Lance
Yes.
college football
Yes.
rule changes show.
There
Okay,
you
we
go.
can do that.
Bill Belichick also brought this up too, so I can use that as a talking point. But I don't want to waste all my good material here during the course of the season.
Save it for the
Yes.
offseason, Lance.
In all seriousness, though, he knows the geography of the field, John. Okay? How
does,
many
right.
plays has he made where he's had the ability to get both feet in or he drags the opposite foot? Off the top of my head, it's happened at least twice. Okay? So that is what I'm most impressed with. You could have great hands. You could have great speed. Can you finish the play?
Yeah.
Jalen Hyatt has done that.
And to that point, Lance, I like the way he's able to locate the ball, not slow down, get
Yeah.
his head around and catch it, and then get his feet in, to your point. Combine that with the speed, I agree. Again, that's not to say, you pick in the top 10, you have a guy you think could be a number 1 wide receiver, you pick him. But Jalen Hyatt in that role as your big play speed guy on the outside, you're not drafting somebody to take that role away from him. So I agree with you. I'm going to go with Jalen Hyatt there as well. Now, I'm going to throw a couple names out. I want to see what you think of them. Unless you think there's another easy name out there that you think is no doubt a building block. Because I don't think there's another easy name on this list.
I'd go with you there. Yeah, there's no one, and I've got the depth chart in front of me. I wouldn't put anyone. I do think if you were maybe considering Wan'Dale Robinson, he's in that Jason Pinnock conversation. See,
I agree with that.
I was very high on Wan'Dale Robinson coming into this season, and I still am. I don't think the at-bats and the opportunities have been there.
Well, I think
for
the
him this
quarterback
season.
situation
Correct.
and the offense,
So-
the offense in general
Sure.
has
So
hurt him.
I don't think we've had a true opportunity to evaluate him, but his youth, his skill set, his ability to be a runner/receiver, I think you have to give serious consideration for him to be part of that dialogue.
Yeah, I don't think the Giants would draft a slot-only receiver to replace him. I agree with that. Or go out there and sign a slot-only receiver to take that Wan'Dale Robinson role. I agree with you. I think that's fair. I would put him in the Jason Pinnock category. I think that's good.
So who else did you have in mind? Well, I'm assuming he was one of the guys.
He was one of the guys.
Okay.
Another guy,
Gotcha.
how about Darren Waller?
That's
Because I wouldn't go spend big money on a free agent tight end because you have the veteran, you have Bellinger. But if
Yeah.
you're sitting there and you think, let's say you're picking 9th, and Brock Bowers is sitting there, and you think this guy's going to be Tony Gonzalez. Darren Waller's on the wrong side of 30. He's still a really good player. You could bring in Brett Bowers, have him play next to Waller as a dual tight end maybe for a year or two, depending on how you want to do it. In that situation, would you consider taking a guy like Bowers? And if your answer is no, then I think you're including Darren Waller in this conversation.
See, I want my cake and I want to eat it.
No,
too.
you can't have your cake and eat it
I'm
too.
sorry. I'm
It's
going to
one
go
or
with
the
the No, because see, here's my response to both your questions.
Yes.
I would say no to Bowers. I think there's other pressing needs on this roster to address
Okay.
with that high of a pick. Okay?
Gotcha.
So that's my response to that.
Okay.
But I would say I still have concern about Waller from a health perspective.
I agree with that.
I wouldn't be willing to
Okay.
roll the dice with him being my security
So
blanket.
you don't need to spend big resources to replace him now, but the health tells you long term you are going to have to find an eventual replacement.
But here's the third part. I haven't gotten to the third part.
Ooh, it's trifold.
The third part is you got Daniel Bellinger, okay? Let's
a
not
good one.
forget about
That's a
him.
good point,
And
too.
While Bellinger is not Waller, Bellinger can make plays. He's proven that.
Mm-hmm.
And he can get open and they can scheme accordingly. So I would argue, John, even though there's that iffiness about Waller, I think you already have somebody on the roster that you don't have to spend a huge resource on
agree.
another tight end.
I'm with you
so
on that.
That's my third option.
I agree.
As to why I answered the first two that way.
I'm with you. I'm sure. Okay, and I think your take is solid. I agree with it. The other
So
guy,
I'm not putting Waller in the building blocks.
No, you're having him in the second tier.
Correct.
Second
That's
tier.
why I'm not
That's
putting
fine.
him there.
Second tier. I
Yeah.
got you. And then I think the tough one, and we should bring up, is Evan Neal. Joe Shane did mention him in his press conference last week. Said he has to play better. Also said he went back, looked at his Alabama tape, and he's like, "Yeah, it was good." And I look back at it too. I'm like, "Yeah, all right. Thank God, I'm not seeing things. I thought it was good too." So I think the interesting thing is if you're sitting there again. I'm using the Giants' theoretical top 10 pick here as an example, and you see a guy you think is a franchise offensive tackle. Would you select that player there, even though you have Evan Neal after just 2 years?
It's a tough question because I also go back to, remember, the other thing that I want to add to your recap of what Joe Shane said.
Yes.
He was asked about, specifically why he brought up the Alabama tape, was would you consider moving him inside to guard? That was the question, John.
And this is all
that's
part
an
of the
important
conversation,
question.
100%.
Because if you're the Giants, okay, and you have no interest of moving him into guard, then I would say, okay, you got Andrew Thomas, you got Evan Neal, you got two guys you drafted, you got your staples. It's hard to sell drafting another tackle that high, given the other needs of the team and knowing that.
Well, the only way you're drafting a tackle that high is if you're going to move Neal into guard. It's the only way.
Okay,
you do it.
or you're just moving on from him too.
I can't imagine.
No,
After
I can't.
2 years, you can't do that.
No, but I mean, they may look at him, John. Let me give you this hypothetical. Okay. Maybe they don't have any interest in moving him into guard. It's possible, and they still want to upgrade the position. No, can that not exist?
Nah, I suppose.
Those worlds can exist.
I feel like you would at least want to try him at guard before you simply push him aside.
Okay, that's fair. I'm just, once again, we're trying to read
Right.
tea leaves here in terms of what Joe Shane had to say. It seems as if they're simultaneously saying he's got to play better, but also at the same time saying, hey, we're not hitting the panic button and trying to experiment and moving him to center or moving him to guard, meaning there's still upside, there's still potential because he's not that far removed from college. So if that's the mindset and nothing, John, drastically changes between the end of the season and the beginning of the draft.
I mean, we don't even know when he's going to be healthy enough to play.
Correct, yes, but it's not a Daniel Jones-esque injury.
Correct.
Where you're saying he's got to go into the knife. Is he going to be ready?
Yeah, I just want to see him play more and see if he gets better. That's what I want to see.
Sure. Well, you know what? We were talking about Tyrod Taylor being activated. Let's not forget, Darren Waller and Evan Neal are in the same ballpark, same conversation.
Well, Neal has never put on IR though.
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
Yeah,
Never Neal.
correct, yes.
But Neal is. It's like every week you're sort of guessing.
I think he's actually missed 4 weeks. No, Neal at this point.
I'd
Or
have to look
maybe
back.
Maybe 3.
I don't know if it's as much. You know why? Because remember he came back for a game, so it's like a 5 out of 6 territory.
Yeah,
4 out of
I see what you're
5.
saying.
I have to look it up in terms of the notes, but there's still this gray area with Evan Neal. So you have Neal, you have Darren Waller, and you have Tyrod Taylor. Those are 3 players at 3 key positions that perhaps could contribute in the final 5 games. But to circle back to your question, my answer would be no. I would not entertain drafting somebody. If that is Joe Shane's thought process, my answer would be no.
All right, you're right. So he missed 2 games, came back for the Raider game, then missed the next 3. So he's missed 3 games.
So then what is
3
it?
straight.
But then it's
and
2
5 out of
others,
6.
5 out of 6.
That's
Okay.
correct.
So
yes.
that's what it is. Yep.
All right. So and I don't think there's anyone else there on that list, right? In terms of offensive players, I think we kind of hit them. No.
Well, one other guy, and I would not put him in the ballpark, but in that second tier, Eric Gray. Especially, remember,
as a backup running back, yes. Someone threw out there the other day. I was talking to them. Like, how about Tommy DeVito as a backup quarterback? Would you want to replace him as a backup quarterback?
Well, that's why we go back to the conversation we had at the beginning
and
of the show.
we come full circle.
Yeah, so, I think we covered that. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So, I think those are interesting names.
Yeah, I can't. Once again, I'm surveying the depth chart here. I don't think I would put anybody else. Isaiah Hodgins, maybe. I mean, he is young, John, but not a guy that you drafted. And given the production this year, and once again,
and the snap
partially
counts.
that is because of the quarterback and the snap count and how much they've been rotating personnel.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a saying of, hey, we've got to have him and we wouldn't entertain other options.
And obviously,
So,
Azudu and McKeithen haven't shown you enough.
No, correct.
So, yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at on offense. So, let us know what you think. 201-939-4513. Join us on Sunday, December 17th at Tommy's Tavern in Clifton, New Jersey to watch the Giants take on New Orleans. Enjoy Modelo drink specials. Meet a Giants legend and enter a raffle to win game tickets and more. Visit Giants.com/Bart Network to learn more. We order food often from Tommy's Tavern, actually. It's very good. They have a very nice beet salad, believe it or not. If you like beets, Really good beet salad.
Beets, okay. Gotcha. I didn't think that was going to be the selling point, but...
Well, when we order...
Well, of all the food... You're talking about ordering the house. You're talking about...
Well, I usually pick it up and then I bring it home.
Yeah, well, because I was saying, I was like, you're not ordering here. I mean, you got an entire kitchen.
No,
here.
no,
Okay.
at home.
No, I didn't know where you were going with this.
No.
Okay.
Tommy's Tavern's like less than 8 minutes from my house.
So this is more of a personal
It's a local establishment.
recommendation.
Nice. Yeah, it's
Okay.
good.
Gotcha.
No, but
I understand.
they have a wide variety. You can get pizza, you get burgers, they have sushi, believe it or not.
So they have pizza,
It's
they
actually
have
not bad.
burgers, they have sushi, and you decided to lead with beets.
Yeah,
Okay.
hey, a good beet salad is hard to find.
Bears beats Battlestar
Oh,
Galactica.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica. That is correct, Pearson.
Beet salad.
The beet salad. For people that like beets, they have.
Well, I like a salad, but once again, I wouldn't sell it with the beets first. But it's very interesting where you decided to go. Is beets a building block of food in your mind?
Beets
Meaning-
are a building block salad for sure.
Building block salad.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
Gotcha.
For people that like beets, the reason why their beet salad's really good, first of all, they're fresh beets. Second
would
of
hope
all,
so, yes.
they have the purple and the golden, so you get both. Usually, you just get the purple in the beet salad, but they have the golden ones and the purple.
So
It's
you're
nice
a color
combination.
person when it comes to analyzing your salad?
I don't care about the color, but the beets taste a little bit different, so you get a little variety depending on the color. But always get the dressing on the side, by the way.
And what's the rationale behind that? Now you have me very curious.
Too heavy.
Too heavy.
Too heavy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So meaning
If
they
it
put too much on.
Correct.
So you like to have the decision-making power. So you like
Yes.
to call the audible at the line of scrimmage.
Generally speaking,
That's
with
what-
salad, I
yeah.
will always get the dressing on the side. I feel like everyone, for me, they overdress the salad if you get it put on at the restaurant.
And you don't want it to overshadow the beets.
Well, correct.
Yeah, you don't want to wash
By the way,
that out
for
from
anybody,
salad.
the listeners out there that have not either tried beets or don't think they don't like beets, are phenomenal. They're really healthy. They're sweet. They're really, really good. Big proponent of beets.
I could tell. Well, I don't know what gave it away, but I could definitely tell. Yes.
Anyway, Tommy's a good place. Go check it out. That is my personal recommendation.
That is some personal recommendation,
I know,
by the way.
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Go subscribe to the Giants Huddle podcast, another personal recommendation. A lot of long-form interviews. We just put one up today. I just promoted on my Twitter feed. Sam Monson from Pro Football Focus gives kind of their analytical look at where the Giants are at the bye and some of the players on the roster too. Go check that out. Giants.com/podcast, the Giants mobile app, or just search for Giants Huddle on your favorite podcast platforms. And for all of our podcasts, including the Giants Hangout, which I believe is up and posted, Lance recorded this morning with his usual crew of Russ Howard and Matt Sytak. Join them as well. Go check that out and subscribe to the Giants Hangout. And for all of our podcasts, leave a 5-star positive review if you're on Apple Podcasts. We would really appreciate it. All right, let's get to the phones. 201-939-4513. Let's go to Donnie in Queens. He will lead us off. Hi, Donnie.
Hi, guys. How are you? Hope you had a good holiday.
Oh, it's a holiday. The bye is a holiday now. I wasn't aware on that. I didn't get that memo.
I was talking about
It
Thanksgiving.
was for me, but yes.
Okay.
I haven't talked to you since Thanksgiving.
No, understandable. Okay.
It
Gotcha.
was excellent, Donnie. What's going
Yes.
on, pal?
That building blocks list was like a beet salad. Not very
It was
appetizing.
delicious.
Oh, my
Apparently,
God.
Donnie's not as big on beets as you are.
Delicious
so,
and
yeah.
nutritious, by the
Yeah.
way.
I actually love beets. But,
Oh, you do? Okay.
I don't,
Purple or gold? Hold on. I can't sleep tonight. Purple or gold? What's your choice? Purple.
Okay.
He's a purple guy.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fair.
if somebody's
Yeah.
recommending me a restaurant, I don't want to hear about the beet salad. Just like if I was talking about building a roster, I wouldn't want that group of players.
No,
But-
see, Donnie, here's the thing. The reason I brought that up specifically because I feel like a good one is hard to find. They have a lot of
That
other
is
great
true.
stuff. So if I find a place that has a good one, it tends to be my go-to for that place because I have trouble finding it in other restaurants.
That is true.
That is my rationale.
All right.
It's all about position scarcity, Donnie. You have to understand.
Especially in Jersey, apparently. Yes. Yeah.
Look, if the goal is to win football games, right? You got to go back to Tyrod. And personally, I hope they stick with Tommy because I don't think they'll win any games with him based on the remaining schedule. But I mean, if you just try to look at this logically, he played in the Jet game. You know, they didn't let him throw the ball, so you kind of throw that one out. The Cowboy game, the offense was a disaster. The Redskins game looked good, but if you look at the Redskins over the last month, everybody's
Commanders.
moving the ball on the Commanders. I'm sorry, old habits.
I know. I got
the
you.
Commanders. Didn't mean to offend anybody.
No, of course.
And then you look at the offense was abysmal against New England. It's just New England's offense was worse. So they're not functioning as an offense by and large with Tommy under center. So happy for the kid. He got some good moments here, but it's not fair to the wideouts and the rest of the team to not put the best player on the field. and he would be the best player. And keep in mind, to Lance's point, yes, the offense wasn't great with Tyrod in there, but he was out there with Justin Pugh playing left tackle. And with Thomas back, that should afford him a little bit more time and comfort back there to, make some better plays. So if I'm Brian Dable, I think you got to go to Tyrod. Me personally, I hope Tommy plays because I don't think there's a win on the schedule. Maybe New Orleans with him there. So that's really kind of where I'm at. Real quick, John, I listened to the Sam Munson Giants Hall.
Well, that was quick. That only went up like an hour and a half ago, man.
Yeah, man. I've got flexibility at work on Mondays, so that's usually why I call on Mondays.
Nice.
So I was able to listen to it. And again, just a bit of a sobering view on where the franchise is. Need more impact players, and that's really what this boils down to. So we'll see where they go, a few more games, but I just think, in fairness to the rest of the roster, you got to go to Tyrod. So I'll hang up and listen, and I appreciate you guys taking my call, as always.
Donnie, fair point. Look, I totally get what you're saying, but I'm not sure the players look at it that way, to Lance's point previously, where I think they say, well, we did what we needed to do to beat New England, and again, the offense was not stellar in that game. We're not telling you it was. But they did what it took to win the game. To Lance's earlier point, too, they protected the football. They did not turn it over. And then they had a very productive – you can make the argument that Tommy DeVito might have had, besides Daniel's game against Arizona, could you argue Tommy DeVito's game against the Commanders was the best passing game the Giants' offense has had all year?
Well, he threw for 246 in that game. The high this year was, Jones had 321 against Arizona.
Right.
And then the second highest was Taylor had 279 in the first matchup against Washington. But they scored 14 in the first half. They didn't do anything in the second half. Let's not forget. And then here's the other thing that I would bring up. Donnie makes a fair point about Tyrod had a real backup offensive line. Tyrod also had Darren Waller in that Buffalo game.
Good point, too.
Tommy hasn't had Darren Waller. So I don't like to get into the grainy details about personnel when, let's face it, they haven't been really fully healthy the entire season. There's been limitations for all quarterbacks, and I stand by my point. Tyrod Taylor, who once again I'm a huge supporter of, the team overall had 9 points against the Bills, 14 against the Commanders. That came in the first half, did not come in the second half. I don't see a huge differential no matter who's been at the controls.
And by the way, you want to talk about how I always say opponents matter, and I drive people nuts by talking about the opponents every week and why it's important. Well, we just mentioned what the Giants' 3 best passing games were this year, right? Well, Washington has the worst passing defense in the league in terms of yards per play, and Arizona's 25th. The 2 worst passing defenses on the schedule. No surprise. Those are the 3 games you had your 3 best passing games against.
Yeah, and this is why we always bring context into the conversation. It's not to take any credit away from the team. It's just to provide a realistic conversation.
And also when we preview these games, to explain to you how these games could go. Because what do you think these coaches do all week? They're watching the other team define their strengths and weaknesses to attack their weaknesses. So we're trying to tell you what the weaknesses are to give you an idea for how the coaches might want to attack a team any given week.
It's more of a reason why when you do see a team consistently win games against different caliber opponents, it should be commended because it's hard to do that in today's NFL.
Right.
You look at the results. I mean, even the results yesterday, Arizona beat up Pittsburgh. Okay? I know Kyler Murray's back, but
and
that was a respectable Steelers defense the last time I checked.
Pickett also got hurt, and the weather was terrible. But yes, I agree with you.
But the point is, these things happen in the NFL, and sometimes it's you have a good matchup against this team versus they don't. Or sometimes it's, as John mentioned, somebody got hurt in the midst of a game. So, yes, it does matter who you play. And it does matter that you can get away with 10 points against the Patriots and to not run to the bank and say, well, if we score 10 for the remainder of the 5 games, we're absolutely going to be in a position to win that. That's just the reality of the NFL once again.
And the metric I'm using, by the way, is passing yards allowed per play. I can bring up, EPA or something like that if you want. But just to give you an example of why this is important, the other teams the Giants have played this year, San Francisco, 2nd, Jets, 3rd, Cowboys 6th, Dolphins 7th, then you have the Bills at 12 and Seattle at 13. So every other team the Giants have faced on their schedule has been a top 12 or 13 pass defense team, except for New England, and they are right in the middle of the league at number 16. So it's been a really tough year, especially given what's happened with the Giants on the offensive line at the quarterback position, and then the competition. You want to know why the passing offense has been so anemic? Just look at that combination of factors, and that's really all you need to know.
Well, and the other thing I would add is, interestingly, as I was going through all of those teams you were listing in my head, I said, okay, well, which games were the Giants actually in it realistically? And it was the Jets and the Bills. Okay, well, what's the common element, John, between both of those teams? I would say both of those offenses have been far from juggernauts this season. And
Yeah, and
yes,
that was the game
Buffalo
before
has had its fair share of ups and downs this season.
And that was the game before the Bills fired their OC, correct? If I'm not mistaken, was it right, or was it 2 weeks later they fired Dorsey?
I think it was a little
2
bit
weeks later. Maybe
yeah,
they
with
fired Dorsey.
Yeah, a few games after. Yeah.
But again, just something to keep in mind in terms of context as to why certain things happen and why the season
Absolutely.
looks the way it
Sure.
does. Hugo in New Jersey, and then Randy in California after him. Hugo, what's up?
Hey, good afternoon, guys.
Hello.
Hey, John. How are you doing? Are you feeling better? I was getting a little bit worried about you.
No, I was good. Honestly, once I got the antibiotics in me on that Monday when I got the test back that I had it, I was feeling pretty much fine by Wednesday morning. I just didn't want to come here and infect everybody, to be quite honest with you.
Okay.
And then last week for the bye, I wanted to give everyone else a chance to get their shift. So that's it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's I'm glad to hear that. Recent. I think you had another health bout earlier
I
in the year.
strep and pneumonia within 5 weeks of each other.
Apparently, Hugo
Yeah.
charts this at home.
No,
He knows your health better than your personal doctor.
And as
Yeah.
people that listen to the show, I'm like, I've never missed. I'm never sick. I'm always here. It was really, really odd for me not to be here.
Thank
Trust
goodness
me.
for that beet salad, Hugo. You
Lance
know,
was
we didn't
thrilled
have
that
it.
I wasn't here, but that
Thank
other
goodness
than
for
that, it
those
was
beets,
fine.
man. Those purple and gold beets. It's amazing what that
But
does
when,
a trick for. Yeah.
I need to get like a
But
beat
when John-
sponsorship.
Yeah. I'm surprised you didn't have it already. Yeah.
Well, when John, I guess the final straw was when John got hit in the head. I was pretty certain that he crossed the black cat that seems to reside in that building. So it's been one thing after another. Anyhow, listen, given
still see it.
given where we are, I think one of the most disappointing things for me is that it doesn't sound like either Josh Azudu. Well, Josh Azudu, it doesn't sound like he'll be playing again this year, and Evan Neal is missing all this time because
Yeah, it is disappointing. You're right.
If I had to come to a conclusion at this point, I would say that the Giants are really in need of 3 new offensive linemen.
Well, Hugo, at this point, look, I don't think you're bailing. Like, you're not removing Evan Neal from your lineup and giving up on him after 2 years. So, you can't.
Here's the thing, John. There's got to be a plan around this, all right? Because as a wise man once told
no,
me,
that's true. I agree with you.
Hope is not a plan.
No, I agree with you
Hope
on
is
that.
not a
No,
plan.
there has to be a
So-
plan. I'm with you on that, Hugo. I agree with that.
Okay. So look, you could check my facts with Paul later on, but I'm going to point to November 27, 1988. Okay, the Giants were in a playoff
Pearson's
race,
birthday.
but they eventually.
No.
Uh,
sorry.
so they eventually did not make the playoffs with a 10-6 record, but they were in the playoff hunt. They had a game down in New Orleans. Phil Simms was injured, and they actually won the game. Jeff Rutledge threw a pass down the left sideline to Stephen Baker to win the game. That was the famous Lawrence Taylor game where he wrecked the game for New Orleans playing
I know the game.
with a separated shoulder. One of the most meaningful things that happened in that game was in 1988 we drafted 2 tackles. Eric
It was
Moore
Jeff
out of Indiana.
Hostetler, by the way. I think you said Jeff Rutledge. It was Hostetler. I think you meant.
Jeff Hostetler started the game and it was replaced at halftime.
Oh,
by
okay.
Jeff Rutledge.
Okay,
So
no.
you can check all this.
No, that's
You
right.
can
I'm bringing
check
up the
all
box
this,
score. No,
You're right.
no, you're right. Rutledge did come in. Rutledge, though, Hostetler threw the touchdown pass early in the game. Then Rutledge came in. He was picked off. He did not throw a touchdown pass. But, yes, Rutledge did come in. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. It's been a long time.
No,
But
all
look,
good. I just want to make sure that we're, accurate in terms of your assessment.
Take that,
In the
Paul
88
Dottino.
comparison,
Lance
that's all.
Medow will
Yes.
fact check. We don't need Dottino for that. He has Pro
Well,
Football Reference, baby.
Yes.
So the point I was going to make, in 1988, the Giants drafted 2 offensive tackles, one Eric Moore out of Indiana and Jumbo Elliott out of Michigan.
Yeah.
Okay. Jumbo struggled mightily at the beginning of the season. Like Evan Neal, he was not a ballerina. Okay? So
Well,
he got benched.
his name was
But
Jumbo.
In this game,
so.
Yeah, that'd be tough.
yeah. So in this particular game, the left tackle got hurt. and Jumbo had to be inserted. It was later in the season. And New Orleans had a group of linebackers that they were called the Dome Patrol. They were absolutely a terror.
Oh, yeah,
And
Pat Swilling, Sam Mills, Vaughn
Johnson, and Ricky Jackson.
Ricky Jackson, that was the fourth one. Thank you.
Yep. So, but Jumbo went in there at left tackle because the left tackle got hurt in that game. And he blocked Swilling and Jackson. And after the game, Parcells said, he's our new left tackle because I've seen him do it now, and I saw him do it against good competition. What I'm hoping for is that Evan Neal has his Jumbo Elliott moment at some point this year, and I don't want to see him just block some scrubs. I like to see him go in there in Philadelphia on December 25th.
Well, Hugo, you hit it.
He's got to be on the field, though,
yeah,
to
Hugo,
your point.
Yeah,
though.
Hugo, you hit it. Look, if you want to circle 2 games, circle that game against Philadelphia because you're going to see good rushers, and it'll give him a couple more weeks to get back and get healthy.
I mean, Evan Neal has played 20 games, okay? 20 games. He has yet to play a full season.
Is that including the playoff games or no?
No, that's just regular season.
So 22 then includes
Okay,
the playoffs, yes.
But even 22.
Well,
I mean, think about it. 17 a year, that's 34 games. So he's up to 22. So that's just beyond a rookie year, essentially.
Yeah, he hasn't even hit a season and a half.
Yeah.
Well, listen, here's my point. If he does that, then you don't really have to think about a backup plan as much. Going back to the
but see,
point. But if he doesn't...
But Hugo, here's where I disagree with you, okay? And I understand you brought the 88 example, but personally, one game to me doesn't define a career. Okay, so even if Evan Neal gives you that moment, does that mean he's going to do it for the next 6 or 7 games? You want to see consistency. Just because he goes out there and performs well against the Eagles, that guarantees he comes back 2024 and can get the job done?
I'm saying if he does it against the Eagles and does it well for the last 3 games of the year, so if he does it twice against the Eagles and once against the Rams or 4 times or whatever, that would be somewhat of convincing evidence. And look, he doesn't have to be perfect. He can get beaten. I mean, those guys are really good. But he can't beat Here's the problem with Evan Neal. John Michael Schmitz, to your point, hasn't been an all-pro, right? But he hasn't been a disaster. Evan Neal's been a disaster.
Now, Hugo, in fairness, and again,
that's the problem.
Offensive tackle is a lot tougher position to play than center, though. Too remember that you're on an island, and you're in a much more difficult spot against much better players.
No, listen, I agree with all that, and that's why he was taken 7th overall because it's a premium position.
Yep.
So we're just going around and saying, he's just got to, like Joe Shane said, he's got to perform it, and we got to see it. Looking at his college tape, of course his college tape looked good. That's why you drafted him 7th overall. I got to see it against high-caliber NFL competition, and that is my point. In a cautionary tale, Eric Moore, the first-round pick, a 10th overall pick, he looked the part. He had the long arms. He was athletic. The best he could do was split time at right guard. He wasn't even a good guard. He had to split time with Bob Cratch, a guy they drafted the year after in the 3rd round. So just a cautionary tale about, first-round pick offensive tackles going to guard.
Hey, look,
I just thought
there are no guarantees in life.
That historical example, right, is something to point to as, some indication that players could struggle and then come in and do well.
Sure.
And that position changes, as some people like to advocate, aren't always successful, even with first-round picks.
100%.
100%.
Thank you, though. Appreciate it.
Also because you can't hide an offensive lineman no matter where you put them. I mean, they got to block people, whether they're inside and they have some assistance or they're on an island. So that's the reason why there's no quick fix in moving a guy to the interior. But based on what Joe Shane said, the plan is to keep him at tackle. And I understand that philosophy based on the fact that, as I mentioned, he's only been in 22 games. It would be ideal to have him ready to go coming out of the bye. I don't know. Brian Dable has not addressed the media, and he has no plans to address the media today. We're not going to hear from Brian Dable until Tuesday. So we don't know what the injury report is for all these players. But yes, if they can get him out on the field and you can continue to evaluate him, absolutely. I think that holds value. But the moment that the last caller was talking about has to come in a group of games, not just one game, meaning you don't do well against the Eagles the first time and then all of a sudden put them on a float and celebrate. You got to see it over a stretch of contest.
All right, folks, go download Giants TV, the Giants official digital streaming app. You could find it on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Giants mobile app. It's free. Original video content, including this program, game highlights on demand, direct to Big Blue fans. And if you want tickets to any of the remaining games, go check it out, giants.com/tickets to secure your seat. All right, well, we got one more caller on hold. We'll get to him, and then if we want one more person wants to call in, we'll try to screen you as well. Let's go out to California and say what's up to Randy. Randy, what's up?
Hey, happy holidays, guys.
You too, Randy.
I'm really enjoying this weekend of no pain. Just saying.
Well, Randy, if you watched that 4 o'clock game and was as excited for it as we were, that second half was pretty painful of the Niners and Eagles, too. Just in terms of the quality of the game. Not that the Eagles, obviously you always prefer the Eagles not to win, but I wish it was a better game. I was more excited about that being a good game.
By the way, Randy, before I let you continue, just want to point something out, which I didn't think we brought up. Sure. If you looked at the schedule earlier in the year, I think a lot of people anticipated maybe Philly won't have anything to play for. That was a huge game changer yesterday because now Dallas and Philly are separated by a game.
And they play next week.
And if the Cowboys win, all bets are off, meaning because now the Eagles, it's not just the division, it's the number 1 overall seed. So that loss was huge because if you're looking for a picnic for the Giants later on in the season, that picnic is not going to have any beats in the box, okay? I'm just warning you. But go ahead, Randy.
Yes.
Yeah, but I don't even think the way we're putting up points, we can even beat their backup.
Well, I mean, listen, that's a whole other conversation, and that's a fair point. But I'm just saying there were a lot of people thinking, oh, the Eagles are not going to have anything to play for. It's going to be a meaningless game like it was towards the tail part of last year. And
that Eagles-Cowboy game next week is going to be huge.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Randy. I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's okay. I appreciate it. I really appreciate you guys. We all do, right? We really enjoy your insight. But my question is, I don't still believe we're one player away, and next year's draft is going to be huge for us.
I sure say, by the way, Randy, not for nothing, I hope nobody thought they were one player away last offseason either, by the way. But, just for the record.
Right. Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, but do you remember they were saying we don't want to get this receiver because we're not one player away, right?
Right. I see what you're saying. I got you.
Yeah. And everybody keeps talking about trading up, but I think that's the opposite way of what we should be doing right now, or even thinking if you're Joe Shane, because we need a lot more pieces in this roster, right? And by maybe trying to trade down a little bit, get up some more draft picks. We got 2 number 2 draft picks, right? We need to put more picks to have more shots at the, quality.
You want volume,
right?
yeah.
But Randy, generally, I agree with you real quick, Lance. I'm sorry, but I do think this draft, as little different than the last 2, I do think you have a number of true blue chip players at premium positions. So if you're picking like 5th or 6th or something, and one of those true blue chip guys are there, and I'm talking about the Olufashinus, I'm talking about the Joe Alts, I'm talking about even the Brock Bowers, I'm talking about Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, guys like that, and there might be other people in that conversation too, depending on what you think of some of the defensive players in this draft, like the Dallas Turners of the world. Right. Then that's a different conversation. Now, if you're picking like 9th or 10th, and you're not getting one of those blue chip guys, and you're in that second tier already, would I go down 7 or 8 picks to pick up more draft picks down the road? Absolutely. 1,000%, I'm with you.
Exactly. And everything I hear from everybody is saying trade up. I'm like, no, we need more players. We need somebody to compete against O'Neal, right? We need, we need so many players and receivers. And, I'm sorry, I love Barkley, right? He's been with us a long time. But I really don't think he's the answer. I really don't. And I don't think we should be spending the money on him.
Well, they could franchise tag him again, though.
Well, Randy,
they don't have to give him
but Barkley's going to be... He's not going to be happy about that again, and he's going to probably blow his top. But in fairness, $13 million.
He doesn't have a choice.
But I was going to say he has no leverage, Randy. I mean, he could be upset. You could say he's upset now. Did that stop him from performing this season, though?
And Randy, I don't think there's any question that Barkley's good enough to be the answer. I think the question is that when the Giants are ready to compete, it was Barkley as a running back that's been in the league for 5 years already, right? This is year 6
2018.
This would be year 6 for him, actually. Yeah. How much is he going to have left at that point, right? I think that's the question.
And is it at this point, is it really worth spending the money on him for the next 2 years, right? When we can get a decent running back maybe in the 4th or 5th round.
Well, but that's also why I would argue the tag has value, because you're not committing to him long term, but you're placing yourself in a position where, God forbid, he doesn't have enough gas in the tank. you at least
Right.
have the leeway and flexibility the second season.
And then you don't have to use a draft pick on the running back. You use it elsewhere. And even maybe it's not the tag, Randy. Maybe you get him on a 3-year deal where you can get out after 2, and then you have him for 2 more years instead of, and then you can make that move then. So I think there are different
Right.
ways to look at it.
Yeah, but anything outside of the 6th pick, I still think we need top 6 or under. I think we need maybe look at trading back.
Yeah, look,
Yeah,
Randy,
but
look.
trade back, get that picks.
Yeah, good call, Randy. I appreciate it. And I think there are good arguments for both. Again, I think we've looked at the last 2 drafts, Lance, and we've talked about this many times. There were not a ton of true blue chip players in those classes, maybe 1 or 2 in each. And once you're out of those first few picks, you're into that second tier of guys. And we even talked about it with, the offensive line class 2 years ago with, Neal, Cross, and Ekwonu. And Ekwonu's, by the way, has had just as many struggles
Carolina,
as Evan Neal has in the NFL so
that
far.
entire line has been a mess this year.
That whole offense has been a mess from
Sure,
wide
well,
receiver
that's
to
why
offensive
Frank Reich
line,
lost his job, yeah.
and the offensive staff too. They let half the staff with him,
Yep.
Staley and McCown too, right?
Yep.
So, those were not at the level of the Tristan Wirfs of Andrew Thomas from a couple years before that, right? So this year's different though. You have guys that are really, really highly graded. So it'll be interesting based on where you're selecting it. We don't know where the Giants are picking yet, so it's impossible
and that's
to
a
have
big
this
question.
conversation,
Sure. Yeah.
to know what your strategy is going to be based on who's available, where you're picking, and how you want to navigate.
And remember, the other thing I was going to add earlier when we had the last caller on is it's always nice on the surface to say you want to move up, you want to move down. It takes 2 to tango, and you need to generate interest from another team. For example,
and you also, by the way, never know when that elite player is going to be there. Remember, we all thought it was a good move when the Giants traded down and drafted and ended up picking Tony, right?
Correct.
Well, you drop 10 picks, you get all these extra picks. That's great. Well, if you go back in time, wouldn't you just take Micah Parsons?
Yeah, or Slater
of course
or somebody
you
else who was on the board.
Yeah. Well, now Rashawn Slater's the guy that I wanted.
Correct. Well, that's why. Well,
the
the reason I keep throwing that out is because they bring that up left and right. A lot of fans,
course.
and my argument is you don't know who they would have picked if they were in that position because Slater was still on the board. So it's not a guarantee that even if Parsons was there for the taking, that they would have taken Micah Parsons.
And not that
It's a
anyone would have
hypothetical
complained about Rashawn Slater either.
No. But we can't just make that assumption.
Correct.
Because there is no alternate universe in which that exists, obviously.
Correct.
But the point I was going to make is you want to move up to get a quarterback, let's say, hypothetically speaking, the teams ahead of you have to have the willingness to say they want to move.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I hate to tell you, if the Patriots and maybe the Bears are sitting there,
Or
and
the
they're gonna-
Commanders or something like. Well, I mean, I know Sam Howell's there, but who knows?
Yeah,
what they
but
wanna
if
do.
the Bears
Remember, especially
decide-
if a new coaching staff comes in,
Correct.
you never know.
And
Yeah.
also with Chicago, they could have a new coaching
Sure,
staff there
yeah.
too. For
so
all you
that's
know,
why
right?
you can't assume just because they have a QB they're going to stick with them.
Yeah, one of those teams just be like, yeah, I'm not trading down. And you know what? Maybe then the Bears are sitting there also with the 3rd pick. They're like, yeah, you think we're going to get not draft Marvin Harrison Jr.? No.
Because they need a playmaker.
Or if you're
for
the
their quarterback.
Cardinals and you have Kyler Murray, well, you want to give Kyler Murray a really good receiver, right? Why would you trade out of Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Would you?
No, and that's another reason why you can't make an assumption that
Correct.
you can move up. And then it's the same thing with moving down. A team wants to have a love fest with a player that warrants them moving up under those circumstances. They have to really love a guy. And more often than not, why do teams move up? They move up to grab a quarterback, okay? Is there quarterbacks, okay, plural, that a number of teams are interested still around wherever the Giants do ultimately pick? All of those things are in the unknown right now.
Ryan in Illinois. He wants to wrap us up with some Evan Neal talk. Ryan, what's up?
Hey, guys. I know we've talked a lot about Evan, but I wanted to add one thing, and that's the right guard position has been in so much flux. It's not even fair because it's such a team-oriented thing. But then when you put on the film and people start laughing at him like, oh, you don't know what you're doing? How could you? Well, the right guard just got subbed in for the 5th time in the game. Like, come on.
No, it's a good point.
Sure. Yeah.
And
well,
then
just
I'd
look at
also
Andrew
add,
Thomas,
it's
too.
cool.
He had a revolving door at left guard as well.
Yeah, exactly. So just the continuity as a whole for offensive linemen, especially young guys like that, we just need to keep swinging the bat for him. I mean, it's maybe going to still be ugly for a little while, but if he can get to even an average right tackle,
that's all you need.
If we really believe that Schmitz is going to be that good, shoot, he and then the left tackle, Andrew Thomas, can lead the way. And if Evan Neal can just get up there. But one thing I was going to add in terms of the conversation with the running backs, do you think because Jonathan Taylor got a solid deal, that's going to raise the salary cap, or not salary cap, pardon me, the franchise tag number for running backs enough to be looked upon more favorably?
No.
Take the answer off the list?
Nah, I don't think it'll it might jump in a minuscule way, but I don't think it'll jump to a point where running backs will feel better about having to get tagged. They want long-term guaranteed money. That's what they want.
Well, I guess just for clarification, are you saying when you say it's going to jump, meaning it's going to jump to appease the running backs?
No, I think
that's what he's referring to. No, it's the top
takes the
5
average salary.
I
so
get
when
that.
he bump it, I
don't think Taylor's contract has skyrocketed the running back salaries in the.
And I don't think Joe Shane's going to change his view of how to handle that position either, based on the contract he got. And by the way, there's literally, Ryan, if you look at Indianapolis, the argument for not paying running backs is staring you right in the face.
Yeah.
So you pay Jonathan Taylor, and then you splitting carries half and half with Zach Moss, who you got off the freaking scrap heap.
Who Buffalo discarded,
you're right.
And now all of a sudden they bring him in and they make him a productive player.
And they were literally putting up identical numbers.
Yeah, I'm actually still very surprised that the Colts gave him a contract when they did, considering how well
especially
Moss
after
playing.
Zach Moss started playing that way, right?
Very bizarre.
Yeah, so, Ryan, it's really tough. I feel for running backs. I feel for guys like Saquon. But it just, when you're trying to manage your cap and manage your roster, it's hard to avoid examples like that for why it's very difficult to pay running backs.
Would you say, though, that even maybe with the bleak situation that they're looking at, per se, even if it goes up a couple 100,000 to $500,000, because isn't it an average of the top 5 salaries or something like that? That nature, the franchise
5,
tag?
yes, that is 5.
Well, you're
correct.
talking about the tag number,
Yes.
but here's the thing. I don't think,
Thank you,
to
Ryan.
your
Appreciate
point,
the call.
and appreciate the phone call, I don't think the Giants, John, are debating the number on the tag. I think they can live with that if they have to tag him again.
Yes.
That's not the question. The question is if you give him a long-term deal.
Well, I think he wants to know if Saquon would be happier to play on the tag if it went up a little bit.
Okay.
And I think the answer is no.
No, I don't think the number is going to jump that much. I mean, think about it. And I think I brought this up on a previous show because I had him on my Sirius XM show. The name is escaping me. The former Chicago Bears running back, Matt Forte, who went through the tag. I had him on, and he was tagged. We're talking about, you got to go back 10 years, okay?
Was he a host or a guest?
No, he was a guest.
Yes,
He was a
okay.
guest. Yeah. So by the time Forte got the tag to the current situation, John, we're talking about the tag has gone up about $3 million in the span of a decade.
Wow.
Oh, I mean, it's minuscule. So,
And that was Forte was a good 10, 12 years ago.
and
right?
that's why. So that's my response to the caller. You're not seeing a significant jump within 1 year.
And how much has the cap gone up in that time? Which
Correct.
is why it's
that's
why
that's
running
a
backs are
statement
mad.
alone. Yeah.
Correct. And I get why they're mad.
But I mean, once again, not to rehash everything. In summary, the bottom line is, if anybody should point the finger, point it at your own union to prioritize the franchise tag conversation.
Yeah, right.
That's how you make the biggest change.
Right. And I would say this too. Like, I think it doesn't necessarily have to be the franchise tag. If they could, everyone saw what Joe Shane hasn't confirmed this is what the offer was, but if you want to use it as a basis just for our argument, that kind of shorter term deal, but not 1 year deal that they were kind of going back and forth on before the tag got signed, I think the Giants would be willing to make a similar type of offer again this offseason. Would it be as long because one more franchise tag is kind of trimmed off what it is? Maybe not.
So you're talking about like a 2-year deal?
Or
type
like
of thing?
a 3-year deal where you can get out after 2 years, something like that.
Okay.
And I think that's reasonable. I think Saquon is, I don't think we've seen a deterioration in terms of his running ability where you would be worried about. Like, do you have any concern that Saquon still wouldn't be a really good player for the next 2 years?
No, not at all.
Neither would I.
And does his perspective change, John, after what he went through? Is he now more willing
Another injury
to take a similar offer? Because remember, the other thing you have to understand is Barkley was also coming from a different mindset
right
before last season. Now, if he knows, okay, it's the same go-around again, I don't have the opportunity to test the market, he may have a little bit more willingness, which then obviously helps the team's perspective.
And then the last thing before we say goodbye, and just, my whole thing this offseason is I want to focus all my resources on the offense. I'm tired of scoring 17 points a game. All right, you gotta improve the offense. Receivers, well, if you let him go, are you taking? Even if you take a couple steps forward at wide receiver and offensive line, you're then taking a couple steps back if you let him walk because he's so good. So it's a real tough jigsaw puzzle here. If you want to maximize the offense, if you lose him, he's your best playmaker. So then you almost have to add another playmaker and then replace Saquon as a playmaker. You know what I mean? So it adds another layer to trying to get the offense better if he's not in the building, which is tough.
Sure. And there's not another running back on the roster that could just replace him and give you that type of skill set. And here's the other thing, and maybe this was a little bit of a giveaway, unless maybe we're reading too much into it. The other thing that came out of Joe Shane's presser, he was asked, well, why didn't you trade Barkley at the deadline? His response, John, was because he's the best player on the roster. So if that doesn't tell you
and if he
how
didn't
he feels about him,
if he did not want him here long term, he probably would have traded him, right?
Well, because you figure you might as well get something now than lose him for nothing.
The fact that he kept him around probably tells you that he wants him around, not just for the rest of the year.
Which means that although they have the tag, there will be, I'm sure, additional negotiations. And the question is Barkley of the mindset where he can live with maybe a deal that you talked about, maybe a 2-year deal with a 3rd-year option, 3 years, where you get out of it out of 2, and that gives them an opportunity to gain more middle ground.
I think it's realistic that type of deal could be reached in the offseason.
Yeah, I absolutely would not rule that out, but I also don't think the Giants are going to say we're going to sacrifice flexibility within the cap.
Yeah, it's not like here's 5 years,
just to make sure to bring back
correct.
Saquon. That's the other thing that they have to balance.
I'm with you. Good stuff, Lance. This was fun.
You got it.
Lance Medow, John Schmeelk, Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Thanks to Pearson Butler. Good to be back. We'll see you tomorrow. It'll be Howard and Madeline on Big Blue Kickoff Live on Tuesday. We'll see you then.